First, it's 6:01, so we'll start the meeting. And as you all know, we have another meeting at 7 o'clock for the school building committee, the entire building committee. So we want to get this done before 7. And the first issue on the agenda would be public participation, but is there anyone who wishes to engage in public participation? Hearing none. The first matter is the Greenwood accelerated repair project for the Greenwood School. I sent out an email that I got from Kevin Nigro with the PMA consultants. Bill, Kevin, are you on, I assume?
Yes, I am.
All right, Kevin, do you want to explain? Did everyone also, there were some minutes that went out. Did those go out to people? Did they see them? I don't think people got them, so we'll have to deal with it later. Kevin, do you want to talk about?
Yes, so in continuing with the MSBA closeout process for the Greenwood School, we contacted the MSBA to confirm that we did have to have final billing complete before they put us into the closeout. Anthony has a sheet that he'd like to share that shows the list of items needed for closeout. And you'll see on them, a lot of them have to do with closing out the financials so it gets to audit. So what we did is we prepared an invoice for the complete closeout services. Of course, some of that would be advance payment, but that's the process with the MSBA. Again, they want a final payment before we go to audit. So we're billing the complete amount for closeout.
One question I have, Kevin, has the town received any monies from the MSBA yet?
I believe they have. Anthony, can you pipe in? I haven't been on the website.
I'll pull up the exact number in one moment.
Please.
Oh, Anthony changed his name to Marketing NE.
I have both logins, so let me do this one, apparently. The town has received to date from the state $495,206.
Okay, great. All right. Are there any questions regarding the invoice for PMA consultants for the Greenwood School project?
Joe, I don't have a question on the invoice, but how much is the town? Do we remember the number that the town ultimately is supposed to get? And will the final payment be done once you guys close everything out?
Yeah, Anthony has a worksheet. Anthony, why don't you pop that up too and show it? We'll run you down the list.
I'm having trouble opening it, so give me one moment.
Anthony, I need to make you a co-host here. So
okay.
I didn't know, since you were Marketing NE, I didn't know.
No worries.
If you changed your name on us.
I'm gonna open Bluebeam now.
And by the way, Chip, you should not be looking at this. You should be looking in the road.
I am. If you notice, you probably are looking at my ear.
So, sorry, Chip. I should be able to open it up. But what was the question?
Just run
The
down.
question was, we've got $495.
Yeah.
What is the final payment to the town, the total, and when do we get that?
So, assuming that the invoice tonight gets approved, and then the remaining invoices that I have yet to submit get submitted to the MSBA, and we get full reimbursement on those items, you're looking at about another $20,000 or so. It's less than anticipated, but as discussed previously, the reason for that is essentially the grant amount was based off a higher budget amount, and we came in well under budget from the bidding, so the MSBA participates in those savings. That being said, I still have to review the audit when it comes through, and if there's money that I think the town is rightfully due, we'll pay for that money.
Okay, thank you.
Excluded something for some reason.
Anthony, are you unable to pull that worksheet up?
Yeah, it's giving me issues. I'm trying to pull it up. Let's see. This is the Excel sheet I have for the budget, but essentially these costs that have TBD, these are all the invoices yet to be submitted. So that's about $40,425, and the town's reimbursement is just under 50%. So that's why I say you have about 20 grand. That's probably coming your way. And then they'll issue that. They won't make that payment. They'll issue it in conformance with the final closeout payment, which we then have to accept. So if we have an issue with the audit review, then we'll have to respond to the MSBA. And then once that gets resolved, they'll issue the final check.
Yeah, they have a 5% holdback, Joe.
Yeah.
Until final audit.
Okay.
So Anthony, you can't put up that other worksheet we reviewed this afternoon?
I think I'll be able to now.
Okay, good. This has the totals. We'll make it nice and clear for everybody.
Yeah. So
And then we have the targeted dates also for the MSBA's board meetings.
Okay. Should be able to see this now.
There you go.
Okay.
So this right here, this isn't the total budget. The total budget at town meeting, I have it listed here in words, but total budget that was approved at town meeting way back when last June, I believe, was 1.675 million. Due to the bidding, we actually then revised the budget with the MSBA to 1.376 million. And actually expenditure or contracted to date, even though testing and inspections, advertising, and this scope really wasn't contracted, it was more so pulling from budgetary items that we had. You know, I'll cut to the chase. The 1.2 is essentially what we actually were exposed out of that 1.367. The rest of that kind of 176 grand was contingencies that we really did not spend on the project. The only contingency expenditure we had on the project was the change order for the downspouts and the gutters, rerouting of the overflow drains away from the gas meter, and the push plate in the AI phone scope, which was always part of the project from day one. SD was to fund that out of contingency. But Gale's remaining contract amount, $11,375. They're done billing, so that's never going to get billed. PMA's remaining contract amounts, just shy of $45,000, and the remaining invoice amount that will be presented tonight is the $18,575. So then $26,349 gets returned to the town. And then testing and inspections and advertising, we'll never spend this money right here, the $7,300 and the $1,300. So we are, after tonight, if this invoice gets approved, we're still turning over back $46,000 additional, or I should say, the town is not spending $46,000 out of the 1.2, which is still well under the 1.376, which is even well under the 1.675. So budget worked out pretty well.
So a good way we should have started is, boy, you beat the cost escalation and the lack of material supply, and we still had a good bidding climate, and the town got to reap the benefit of that. If we were doing this project now, we'd be having a different discussion, particularly given some of the availability of roofing materials. So we're happy with the outcome.
All right. Are there any questions regarding the invoice?
I move that we approve PMA's final invoice, and Joe help me for the 18,000, whatever it is.
$18,575, invoice number 04372.00-18R.
As presented this evening.
Yep, I'll second that.
Thank you, Jason. All right, Chip,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Jason,
Yep,
Tom,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Okay, that's it. All right, and I approve. It's unanimous.
Thank you. And you'll see there's the checklist of the items needed for closeout. And most of them at this point are financial.
Yeah.
We do need to sign off from the CX after the period is run through.
Yep.
And the rest is subject to the submitting of the bills, the audit process with the MSBA, and then our final acceptance of the grant amount.
Essentially, these four right here can now be done, and then these two will then be issued by the MSBA once these four are in. So we're
All right.
targeting,
And then there's the upcoming dates for the MSBA.
So
As
we're
published on their website, subject to change.
We're hoping for the 27th, obviously, because we're getting everything in before the 16th, but it's always subject to MSBA. You don't get to choose, they just tell you. So they could push you to the 15th just because of the amount of jobs going for that same board date. You never know.
Very busy right now. They asked us to delay a couple of submissions we have coming up, asked if there was any potential for holding them off. So MSBA is very busy right now.
All right, any other questions regarding the Greenwood project? I have one.
Yep.
Anthony, we got a notice last week about a leak. Has it been resolved?
Yeah, well, so I asked, to backstory everyone, Bob notified us, I think last Wednesday, that the day before he noticed some leaks coming from the roof. So obviously we're past substantial. The course of action is to notify the installer, since you have that 2-year installer warranty. So he notified Greenwood. They came out the next day, I believe. They found a couple holes on the roof, some seams that needed to be rewelded or patched, and they're hoping that that's what the source of the leak was. They did reiterate to walk the roof semi-frequently to at least get any debris up there off the roof, in case for whatever reason that could cause them a puncture through the roof. But that was the fix. I did text Bob today to see if, from the rainstorm yesterday, if there was any leaks, and he did not hear of any, but that doesn't mean there wasn't. So I'm still waiting for news on that.
Yeah, so working with Bob, it's the way to work on these items is through the warranty. And I think, I don't know if we surprised some people with that. This is a 2-year warranty on the roof, not a 1-year. There's an extended warranty through the manufacturer, but the workmanship through Greenwood is 2 years, which is good. And Joe, we certainly be surprised by the leak. We passed, our thermal investigation, our punch list, our sign offs with the roofing manufacturer. And we certainly have had heavy rainstorms before the other night. So don't know what the cause, but they, that seam, I think, was suspect, and maybe some weight of water, I don't know, up on that roof could have caused that, but it's just speculation. And Greenwood was unable to tell us.
All right, anything else? Anyone? Kevin, Anthony,
Sure.
thank you very much.
Okay, Joe,
you.
on the minutes that I sent previously, if you just approve them at the next meeting and let me know, that's probably fine.
Yeah, because I don't think people got them, so I'll
That's fine.
send them out.
That's no
Okay.
issue. All right. Thanks, Joe.
Sounds good. All right,
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
thank you.
Stop share. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Next on the agenda is the DPW feasibility study. Joe Conway, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can
There
hear me?
you are, Joe. Good.
So, joining me tonight, I have Jamie Fair, who you've all met from Weston and Sampson. Joe, a little late, just before the meeting, I had sent you, Jamie provided like a 3-slide update. If I could be allowed to share the screen,
Yeah.
we could show that to you. If
You
not,
want
we
it,
can
or
walk-
did Jamie?
Actually, do you mind passing it to Jamie?
Sure.
I
Thank
can
you.
do that, yep. All right, thank you.
All right, there you go.
Thank you. Share the screen here. One second. Wait. All right, just let me know when you guys, folks can see this.
Yeah, it's starting.
Does that look okay? Can you see that?
It just says it started. Screen sharing.
But you're not seeing the presentation?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, let's try that again. One second. Just bear with me. I'm not sure why it's not working. Let's see. One more time. Screen share.
Very good.
You see this here? Are you able to see the presentation now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Apologize for that delay. My name's Jamie Fair. I'm a project manager with Weston and Sampson, and just going to give you a brief update on the DPW feasibility study. So as of today, we completed a draft preliminary space needs assessment. We worked with Joe and his team closely on that. They're in the process of reviewing it, and we'll be receiving some comments soon. We've already received some initial feedback, and we've also completed the site selection and initial evaluations of the sites that we looked at, and I'll give you a brief overview of that in a moment. And in addition, we met with Mass Development to talk about some potential grant opportunities that were out there. And there was a potential grant potentially for some environmental assessment money, but given the time frame and the amount of money that was available, it was decided not to pursue that at this time. So we looked at several different sites. The first one is the existing DPW site, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. We have the two parcels that make up the existing property, 29 and 27 North Avenue, that are shown here. And then a third potential parcel is the adjacent property located at 23
Jamie,
North
okay,
Avenue.
sorry
no-
for the interruption, but I think we only see the Wakefield.
Yeah, the Public
The
Works
browser?
Department.
I'm
We
sorry?
don't see the presentation. We only see the browser, like from the town of Wakefield.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
you
not
must be-
seeing the actual presentation?
No,
No,
You have
Okay.
multiple screens open?
Yeah, let me, I apologize. Let's try that again. I'm not sure. When I went to share, for some reason, it wasn't doing it the way it normally does. I'm not sure if there's a software conflict or not. So let's do this again. Share screen.
If not, Jamie, I can get it. I can throw it up really quick. You could just tell me when to move forward.
Yeah, maybe Joe, I think there might be some kind of a conflict going on, but let me try this one more time. And if this doesn't work, then I'll flip it back over to you.
oh, there you go.
There you go.
You can
Yeah.
see it here?
Yep. We got
Okay.
the
All
wetland.
right.
Yes, good.
All right. Excellent. You still see it?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll just back up a little bit. So we've got the existing site here. Can you see my cursor here?
Yes.
Okay. So we have the existing site here with the two parcels, and we're looking at those. And then we have this adjacent site here, which is at 23 North Avenue, that we're also considering. And that would be, it's currently under different ownership, but it could be used potentially for the expansion of the DPW. And then the next slide, we've got the wetlands overlay. And essentially what this is showing us is that there are no wetlands in the immediate area. So that's a good thing. We just have some wetlands located over to the east here. So that won't be an issue with this site. And then this is sort of a zoomed out version. This is the FEMA flood map. And essentially we are in an area of minimal flood hazard. So there's no flood issues associated with this site as we might expect. The other site that we looked at was the Vinton Street ball fields. You can see the parcels associated with those are located in yellow here. And then the Nasella Playground area, which are also highlighted in yellow here. But the issue that we found with these sites is that they are both in flood zones. So we really didn't pursue those any further given the flood zone issues that were present. So given that, we're now focusing on the existing DPW site and that adjacent parcel. Our next steps are to finalize the space needs assessment. We're very close to having that completed. Then we're going to complete the site layout plan. We'll work with Joe and his team and lay out the DPW on the parcel and figure out the best fit for that site with the proposed improvements. And once we have that pinned down, we're going to complete site investigations, which will include a geotechnical, hazardous materials, environmental, and site survey. And then once we have that done, we'll move into a cost estimate, followed by a report and then presentation. And that's that's a brief summary of where we are, and be happy to try and answer any questions.
Are you including a salt storage shed as part of this project?
It's something that we can look at. That's at a different location, so it's not really in our current scope of work, but it's something that we could certainly take a look at.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was stored on site for some reason, but it's different. It's different.
No,
It's at a
Phil,
different site, yeah.
Phil, I can touch on that. So we have a small area that we allow residents to come in for. Knowing that I guess in a perfect world, if we had an abundance of land, we'd bring everything together. But knowing where we're going to end up focusing on and the constraints we have, to try to add that into the space is probably an inappropriate use of that. So for now, barring unforeseen changes, the salt shed would remain at Nahat Street at the lower level.
And even though separate site, because it's part of DPW operations, could it be included as part of this project? Because my understanding is that the existing salt shed has seen better days, but is that something that we're missing an opportunity just to include, for all DPW operations to include that?
So the salt shed is old, and it's certainly something that we're going to have to address at some point. I would say, we've all heard about the Camp Curtis project, right? If something like that, we were able to acquire, between 3 to 5 acres, bringing the salt shed with us might make sense. For now, I mean, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that the salt shed would occupy much more space and maybe force us into more of a vertical alignment of our garages, which would probably jump the cost by an order of magnitude. So to say it's a missed opportunity, maybe, but we're kind of boxed into the site that we have and trying to fit as much as we can. The salt shed's basically taking the position of being a luxury.
Yeah. Okay. And I know the feasibility study was for the DPW facility, so I'm not looking to add. I just didn't know if it was because it's part of DPW, if it should have been included or not. And it sounds like not, because it's different location. Like it is a facility. It is a DPW facility, technically. So, okay, just wondering. Thanks.
No problem.
Any other questions from Mr. Fair? Jamie, was there any other sites that were considered at all? Those are just those three?
Those were the three primary. Joe and I did look at the potential for a piece of property located across the street down in this area here. I believe it's a gym right now. The town does not own that, and the issues that we saw is that it's a very long and thin parcel, and so it'd be something that'd be more difficult to develop. It'd be something that could be looked at further, but you wouldn't really be able to fit the proposed program completely on that parcel. It could be something like a satellite facility, perhaps, if that was feasible. But that's, I'd say that's a pretty big unknown, given that the town does not own that property at that time. We're not sure of the status of that.
So Joe, our staff here probably identified about 10 potential properties. Once we started looking into some of it, we gave Weston and Sampson what we vetted out as the best of the best. A couple that come to mind, there's one up by where the high school or the vocational school will be building their access road that we looked at that would have required an extensive amount of blasting. There were some other parcels down the Audubon Road area. The problem we ran into there was wetlands, and New England Power actually owns a lot down there, and to be able to get through to them, to see if there was some sort of partnership we could reach is next to impossible. So unfortunately, with the exception, obviously Camp Curtis was left out of this. This is where we landed of the best of what was left.
Joe, did you guys look at JJ Round?
I believe that is protected Article 97 land. We didn't look into it. To be honest with you, we weren't even 100% comfortable with knowing that we were looking into, the Fernal Field area and Nasella. Obviously it was something we did for due diligence.
I mean, to me, JJ Round is, I always wonder, is that the best use for that area? Now that we have all the basketball hoops at the junior high, and it just seems that that's an underutilized plot of land, pretty centrally located in town.
Mhm.
But what's protected under 97? What's that mean?
Parkland. So the barrier to entry, or the hoops we would have to jump through to be able to reuse that, there'd be a process to that. Jamie, you might be more familiar with that than I am. On our team, the folks in engineering would be what I would consider the resident experts on that topic. Same protections that you would be afforded to, like, the common, for example.
Yeah, my understanding, Joe, it's protected land for parks, like you said, and so that would be, a permitting hurdle that we would have to get over. Have it basically declassified so that it could be, have that classification removed and then allowed to be developed for a DPW.
Yeah, one of my troubles with the existing location, as nice as it is for the centrally located, the fact that it's next to the school, we're looking at, somewhere down the road, maybe having to do an elementary school combined. I don't know, it just seems to be putting a lot of money into this space. I'm frustrated that there's not another space in town that would be better for a DPW yard.
Yeah, Chip, I would say that we recognize that too. So that's one of the drivers with kind of consciously delaying our progress to talk to mass development, was to see, because obviously if we were to vacate the area that we occupy now, that asset could be developed into, a whole bunch of things that are probably more aesthetically pleasing and fit the form and function of town better than, essentially an industrial construction site, in the heart of everything. If we came up with a way that wouldn't cost, exorbitant amounts of money to get out of Dodge, for lack of a better term, certainly that would have been our preference. Unfortunately, with the state of everything built out, what's left is either rock or soaking wet.
So how bad, I mean, there are some uplands in the site up by the high school, right? There are some where you put the leaf piles and all that. There are some wet. I mean, I know it's wet, but there are some uplands there, right?
Yes, so there's some that are owned by the town. Like if you remember the parcel, it was looked at for like the hockey rink, for example. The light department owns some property up that way. DCR obviously in the vocational school. So there's a hodgepodge of ownership up there, but there are some spots in the area.
Yeah, I'm thinking of your site that you already work out of. I mean, I know it's wet, but would it take monumental task to, replicate wetlands somewhere? Or, I mean, that's a perfect site for you guys to, in my mind, pretty central, good location. There's not enough uplands there.
So I think one of the limitations you might have with that is the last half a century of fill. We know that for the site that we have now, the piles to support the weight, of the business we conduct are probably going to have to be pretty beefy. With that area, I think that you're going to have to even go deeper to find refusal, and then, stabilize yourself from that. it's certainly something that we could look into though, and maybe investigate that with a couple of borings. I think they would be cost prohibitive to be there. And then we would have to essentially take a reduction in service, right? If we use that whole area for building space and whatnot, then you probably wouldn't have as much of an ability to have it invited and open to the public for some of the programs that function over that.
Chip or Joe, can you clarify what parcel you're referring to as this possible alternative?
Oh, sure. So the Nahat Street Yard Waste site. So all the way down the end of Nahat Street, basically.
It's the leaf pit.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I just wish it was drier than it was.
So Joe, so you're not going to be looking into that, or you are, or what?
So we haven't. I don't want to speak for Jamie. Maybe we could do a quick overlay and
Sure.
reference that to some of the wetlands. And then we probably have to do some preliminary borings to get an idea of how far we have to go to become structurally stable.
Joe, I wouldn't even go that far. I just do a overlay to see if the space even makes sense.
Yeah,
I've always thought it made sense, but that's, from 99 miles up in the air.
sure. Yeah, we could totally do that. And then, the next time we're back, I could give you a quick update like this, just kind of hear the pros and cons and here's why we essentially landed where we landed with that.
Great. I think that's a good idea to take just a quick overview of that area.
Because
I think that people would have a lot of questions about that.
Right. I mean, I think that's, everybody asked me, why doesn't it be DPW just go right up there? So I think we need to answer that question.
Right. I agree.
So we've taken the approach to this point that, we're not going to leave any stones unturned. So we'll classify that in the same, regard and do our due diligence there.
Great. All right. Are there any other questions for Joe or Jamie? Jamie, what is the next schedule wise as far as come back to us, let us know where you're at?
Sure. So our next steps are I think we're going to look at this this next site that we're talking about at the end of Nahan Street. So we'll get that going up and running as quickly as possible, and we'll work closely with Joe on that. And then once we really need to pick a site, so I think once we have that done, we probably should meet with you folks as soon as possible, figure out if we want to go to that Nahan Street site or if we're going to stay at the existing DPW site. And then once we have that selected, then we'll sort of finalize our site layout, show how the building's going to fit on that site. And once that layout is done, then we go into the due diligence piece of this, which would be the investigations that I talked about, the geotechnical, environmental, hazardous building materials testing, and so forth. So currently we were looking to have those, what I just kind of described there was task 3. Our original goal was to have that done by early August. We're running a little bit behind schedule, but not too bad. And if we're going to look at this other site, it might push us out, a couple weeks more or so. I think there's flexibility there in the schedule to get that done. Originally we were looking to have everything completed by early October. This might push things out, maybe like another month, something like that, looking to be done early November.
All right. So you're not looking to meet next month, though. You're looking for some time in August.
Well, no, I think we would want to meet, if you meet monthly, we would want to probably meet next month to talk about Nahan Street, Joe, if you think that's appropriate. Yeah.
All right. We'll make those arrangements then.
Joe, I also have a question, and I guess this is for Joe Conway as much as anybody. Joe, have we ever put together a scope of exactly what you're looking at trying to handle on this site? What you do currently handle, how many bays of truck maintenance do you need? Do we have a breakout of scope of what you're trying to fit onto the site? Have we seen that?
We're in the process of finalizing that to show to the committee now. I do have for reference, we did a very quick version essentially of this project when there was some talk about some of the area up at Camp Curtis that I can show you. It'll give you an idea. But that is one of the next things that should fall into place. So right now, my group has, all the individual divisions have basically the cut sheets that Weston and Sampson put together, and they're redlining them essentially. So just adding whatever last minute notes they have to it, and that'll become a test fit. But
So like, are you adding truck storage for the water department as a need?
oh yeah, so essentially every division of Public Works, with the exception of the cemetery, the goal would be to get that all in one place, so we're not running out of 7 different buildings. So it would be the goal to move the water division and the sewer division with the rest of us, with the exception of the cemetery, and then the treatment plant operator would be the only other abnormality with that.
So I guess when you start looking at sites, then once you know what all those scopes are, and I mean, I just look at how much stuff you have scattered about. I don't know how you can physically fit all on that onto the site you currently are on. So I guess I asked that we understand the scope and then have a quick assessment, like, does the site we're looking at meet those goals?
Yep. So we should have that. Not to put the heat on Jamie, but that answer should be one of the very next ones that comes out of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think so, because that's going to drive the site.
Yeah, pretty much, or it's going to drive what
Or you're going to have to change how you're thinking, or water's going to have to, stay, hoping that crystal stays icy so you can park on it.
Yeah.
I guess to follow up on that, how do we assess that, a budding piece of land, and if that becomes part of the plan?
So the initial thought would be if that was something that the town could acquire.
What, Crichton?
Yes, the Kytron building, right? So
As long as you don't dig, as long as you don't put a shovel into the dirt.
so essentially that would, not going through all the due diligence yet, that would essentially most likely be the parking lot, which would allow us to expand on the existing sites that we have and put more building on that. So our parking lot that's currently there now would end up turning into building, and essentially the parking lot would shift into the Kytron site if that were to become an option.
Yeah, I would just put out there, like Joe said, that, and you folks know that site has a history of contamination, so we'd want to stay near the surface as much as possible there. Use it for parking, surface type activities like Joe mentioned. The other thing that you're touching on is, the existing site is, it is very tight as it is, and we're looking to expand, the functions that are going to be housed there. And so what very likely could happen as we start doing these test fits is we might have to go to a multi-level structure. Multi-level parking could be possible, certainly multi-level administrative offices. We don't think it's going to all be able to fit all on one level at this point, given that site. So we haven't gotten there 100% yet. I just want to say that's something that seems likely at this stage. And we're working closely with Joe to get that space needs finalized, and then we'll start doing that test fit. And it's great. We have another site to look at. If there's any way we can get off of this site, I think that's something that we'd like to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you start thinking about having to be multi-story there and making it look even more utilitarian than it is now by going up, that's going to be a tough sell.
I wouldn't think we wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't the town own a bunch of land on Butler Avenue now?
Yes, they do. I believe, I don't know all the terms of the agreement. I believe there is a contamination issue with that.
There is.
The other obstacle to that too is, we're, in a perfect world, we move out of the site that we're on because of congestion and quality of the experience of being in that area of town. Right? Interjecting us into a residential neighborhood probably wouldn't be overwhelmingly positive in its reception from the abutters. You also have, a pretty significant ledge cut in there too that would have to happen, which would obviously inflate construction costs.
Yeah, my vote would be a real good hard look at the Nahant Street pit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for the 30 years I've lived in town, I've always wondered why it hasn't gone there.
So it's a residential neighborhood too. It's just the use of it is less residential now. So you're thinking there'd be less adjustment.
And it's at the end, it's been a pit forever. And it's at the end of that kind of residential use and the high school's right across the street from it. So it's not into a residence so much, I don't think, Phil.
Phil,
Okay.
too,
My humble opinion.
because of the size of that might lend itself for some additional buffering where, the parcel at Butler Ave, I think, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 acres.
I think Butler's too small.
Yeah, we'd be literally right to the ends of the property line.
Yeah.
On Street might allow us to be set back a little bit. So maybe if it works, creative design, we could take some of the busier functions and stage them further away from, some of the abutters to not impact them.
So just a quick question, have you scanned the entire town and nothing on New Salem Street, the industrial area down by the concrete pit or anything? Nothing down there?
Nothing that isn't in the flood zone.
Oh, mackerel.
And nothing that we own.
Right.
Correct. There was some area around like Sullivan Playground. The town owns a couple of parcels in there. Again, but the tributary to the Mill and Saugus River is in there. If you flipped up the floodplain maps, you'd find that we're right back in that. Fortunately.
Amazing.
So just so I understand, when we're talking about Nahant Street, is that where the existing salt shed is located? Is that the property?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. It's gonna be tough. Yeah, just looking at the aerial, we'll take a good hard look at it, but you can see the wetlands around there. It's a low-lying area, so we'll certainly look at it. Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions for Joe or for Jamie? Hearing none. Joseph, thank you very much. Jamie, thank you. And we'll get together. So I don't know when, but sometime next month.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, Joe.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
All right. The next on the agenda is the public safety building. And there's a request here. Dave, do you want me to, do you have something?
I don't know if Shane wants to kick it off or not, but we can share. It doesn't matter, whatever you want, Shane.
If you want, yeah, just get into the schedule maybe. I had a couple of things, but they can be looked at.
We're kind of pressed for time, so we might want to jump right in.
Yep. So why don't you go ahead, Dave?
Dario, you want to share and I'll talk?
Yeah. Joe, can you give me permissions, please?
Dario the sharing permissions.
Got it.
Awesome.
So as he's pulling that up, I can jump right in. So we've been working closely with the team and the user groups on confirming the phasing for moving all the operations and which piece is going to go when in the sequence, which is pretty consistent to what was given to us essentially when we came on board. But we just wanted to make sure we did due diligence, make sure we had at least some initial schedule build out to make sure it all worked. And what became apparent pretty quickly once we started digging into the details is that the lobby area needs to go first. And that is, I don't know if Dara, you can put a swash in me with your little thing. No, go back to that. I'm sorry. Yeah, the lobby is, we're calling it phase 2A. It's gonna be building portion 2A, but that's that 4-month sequence right up in the sort of upper middle, the 2A, Dario, just below your thing there. Yeah, so that 4-month sequence is the lobby renovation. That happens pretty much as soon as we get started. And that needs to happen to allow the following renovation areas, which are below that in blue, to sequentially happen after, within the total duration of the 12-month phase. That's all happening at the same time we're doing the addition, which is above. So you might want to scroll down a little bit. There you go. So what became a fatal flaw to some degree is that the systems needed to start that renovation, where it's only 4 months, we'll need all the MEP equipment, VAV boxes, whatever we need to do that pretty quickly as soon as we get out on site. So when you work back from what it takes to get that equipment there, and now you can share the top of that narrative, Dario, just the top piece so people can see it. Be great. The top. There you go. So with the current issue date for the CDs being mid-October, the durations to get subs on board, shop drawings submitted and approved, and then material lead times. And as you heard in the first discussion tonight, material lead times are going crazy. So even with a normal 8 and 12 week duration for equipment, we won't have that in our possession until the end of March, early April at best. And the way things are going, if it doesn't get better, it could be worse. So rather than being able to start the lobby area, maybe flip back, Dario, real quick. In order to start that lobby area as originally intended, as soon as we get out there, in that's the alternate, Dario. Can you go back to the other one, please?
Yep, sorry.
So the original intention was to be there in December and early January. We're not going to have that equipment until probably early April at best. That pushes the entire renovation phase schedule out. So in looking at that, we said, does it really, if that has to happen, and it does, does it make sense to start the addition as early as planned in, this winter, knowing that winter conditions are going to be required to put the structure up and get the masonry in, and that costs money. And we obviously knew what it took to get a budget reconciled at SD. So we think, and we're suggesting, the most prudent thing to do is to push the entire project off until the spring and keep the 12-month duration. But that would also keep the CD date at 10/15 where it currently is. There's a couple of benefits of that. We think there's obviously there's a little bit of escalation, but we think winter conditions savings will help sort of flatten that out. And it also allows the design team not to have to produce an early package for the structure of the addition, which was, I know initially before we got on board, might not have been contemplated, but was the only way to start that addition in April as well, because steel lead times and whatever takes the same duration. So unless there was an early package, there was no way to start that addition that early either. So we're making a strong recommendation to keep the design team focused on what they need to do to get an entire single package out in mid-October. That'll allow the lead times to sort of, for equipment and the addition structure, to sort of align, and we start work in the most optimum time as soon as the weather breaks at the end of March, early April, and keep the duration at 12 months so there's no additional costs for general conditions or anything like that.
Are there any questions?
We're hoping by the time that this does happen, there'll be some settling down of the.
I got lots of
market.
questions.
Go ahead, Chip.
Yeah, I don't like the idea, to be quite frank about it. I mean, I think the longer we delay, the prices just keep escalating and escalating. What about pre-bid packages? What about early bid packages? What about buying stuff early? What about becoming more creative than just pushing things off.
Well, I'll have to defer to the design team, Chip, but I'm not so sure that with all the MEP trades involved in filed subs, it's going to be challenging to put those out as early packages. And I think the design team really needs the time for, especially with the MEP and SD was, narratives as they typically are. And we're finding, that the MEP scopes really need some definition to them. So I'm not sure when it would be in a position to get an early package that would be, worthwhile to put out to bid anyway.
So when do we have to make this decision?
We'd like it as soon so we can get started on updating our schedule and knowing where we're going to be. If we're suggesting that we don't do an early package at all now for the addition based on pushing the schedule, because it doesn't make sense to extend the schedule. This makes sense to push it. So I think Janet would need to know immediately whether or not there's an early package coming for the addition.
Well, wouldn't you do an early package for steel anyway with what's happening in the steel world?
We won't need it. No, and I think, Chip, to be honest, and I'd like certainly to hear left field's position on this, but I think by pushing it, you may actually get some settling down of what the market's doing. The material lead times right now are ridiculous. We can't even get steel right now. You can't get a joist. We'd have to change the structure in some respects. We can't get, it's just right now, things are crazy. So I'm not sure if we kept it that we'd be able to meet the schedule anyway.
It's more of a production issue on some of these than it is material costs. And I will say that wood has come down pretty significantly recently. So there should be some leveling off. It probably won't go down as quickly as it went up, but you're already seeing some changes.
So Lynn and Jane, I assume this shift has been vetted through you guys. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's Shane here. So yeah, we've looked at it and talked to Janet and her team and David and his team. I think that the issue here is, the dispatch is a critical path here. And what we don't want to do is start demolition and then find out we have 8 weeks to get materials on site for the mechanical, electrical, and the systems. All of those trades have to be designed 100% before we can bid them. And I think this mitigates a bit of that risk for material delays after we start, because the last thing we want to do is start and have to stop. This gives us, some time to do that submittal and shop drawing process before we get on site. We'll know when the materials are coming. We'll have dates for everything before we start demolishing anything. And then it just makes sense, I think, to shift everything out to 2 or 3 months so that we remain with that 12-month construction schedule. We don't want to extend the schedule because we're starting steel and concrete on the addition early, but not starting the demolition and the interior dispatch until.
I guess I have trouble with why it would hurt to start steel and construction on the addition prior to the demo of the entrance.
We need to extend the duration, Chip, and that would add cost. We wouldn't be able to do the whole job in 12 months at that point, because you'd be starting early, but for the addition, but not starting the renovations, which because of the way they're stacked and you have to do one before you can do the next, that's going to take 12 months anyway. So we'd be looking at 2 months of additional general conditions.
And you don't think you'd gain that by having the front piece done to shift things into that?
No, because we're also if we keep the addition starting in the December, January, we're going to have winter conditions cost to put the addition up. So we think it's going to save you money to push it. Between the escalation, hopefully coming back to reality and eliminating winter conditions, and the fact that we're not extending the schedule, we're just pushing it.
How much are you hoping to push it?
Essentially 2 months, 2.5 months.
2.5, all right, not 4 months.
No, nope.
So what's the potential start date now?
Contractually, we were looking, when we signed up, we were looking at December 1.
Okay.
And Now I'm just saying, as soon as we can break ground, so mid-March, late March.
Well, and in reality, even if we wanted to put blankets down or something, I mean, the frost has been almost minimal the past few winters.
Yeah, what I'm saying now is really the ability to obtain material and under normal conditions wouldn't have allowed us to start in December for the renovation area. Just
Okay, so how do we then figure out that you don't come back to us and say, okay, what we thought about materials now is even worse than we thought, so we're now going to have to delay it another month? What sort of, and I hate the word guarantee, but how comfortable are you that by doing this, everything's going to be able to be in place?
Because we're keeping the design 100% CD set at mid-October, that gives us, the time it takes to get steel and long lead MEP items is built in. And I think things are starting to get better. I mean, none of us have a crystal ball, but I think the way the entire.
Okay. So
I just feel like.
But what it gives you is.
Extended fees based on pushing this, and what about who's going to be looking for money, either architecturally or whatever, delaying this start?
If we keep the duration to 12 months and don't try to start the addition early, it doesn't change us. And I think we're taking, I don't know if, I don't want to speak for Janet's team, but we're now suggesting that we're not going to do an early bid package. So that should help.
Yeah, I think it maintains the 12-month construction duration.
Yeah, so we hadn't been positioned to produce an early release package for steel, so there'd be a lot of contingencies in that package because it would be, we're only in design development now. So I'm agreeing with Dave that that would cost you for sure because we'd be doing a separate set of specs, a separate set of documents, release, and then we wouldn't know enough to get all the details correct at this point. So I'm not sure what that gains you. So
are there savings?
No.
From your perspective, not having to do that early bid package?
No, because we were never doing it.
I thought we had talked about that from day one.
No. So we never had an early release package in the proposal.
So
of any sort.
this is, this is essentially, an insurance policy. It will allow Janet and her team to complete the 100% construction documents before we bid anything, which means that the coordination between trades and disciplines should be a lot better, which will mean, less risk and change orders during construction. And then it also, is insurance policy against the market and the material delays and lead times.
It gives you 3.5 months to get the submittals and shop drawings done, and gives you a lead on getting materials in place.
Correct.
So you guys have sold me on this. However, I want all parties involved to guarantee that there will be no increase in cost to pre-construction, everything that we've agreed upon to this time of pre-construction costs, because we're extending time. I don't want to hear, I want everybody to agree that their fees are going to stay the same.
Speaking for the bond team, if the duration is the same, there's no need for us to look for.
But you got 2 more months of pre-construction that you're going to have to be around for.
Well, no, because we were going to be around anyway, because we had contemplated an early package. So
okay,
we were on board.
I just want to hear no more fees. That's all.
Not from us.
I don't anticipate from us either. There may be a couple of extra meetings while we're reviewing submittals, but it's not going to affect our fee.
You know, and for me, Chip, I have to check, you know, I've got half dozen consultants. I don't know what the wording of any of their things, if they had a drop dead date or whether, you know, we submit their, you know, anything. I can't imagine anybody's going to ask for anything. I mean, there's going to be a real dormant period here for people, which, you know, we often have between bidding and construction. There'll be, if this goes well, per Dave and Daria's comments, will be doing all the shop drawings in that period of time. So construction, you know, the construction effort will have less shop drawings, you know, so we're switching it. I'll have to let them know about that, but I don't think that affects them. You know, they still have to do the same shop drawings. They still have to do the same meetings. They still have to do the same stuff. It's just split apart. So.
Okay, great. Then I'm okay. It sounds like it's a positive thing as compared to a negative thing. I hate winter conditions anyway.
Yeah, I honestly, I think it's a win-win. Other than the fact that you get the building a couple months later, I think it allows us to control the budget a lot better. We wouldn't have, you know, there'd be some contingencies in our GMP that we don't need now, you know, for the early packages, because obviously there'll be change orders for as the steel changes as we get on site, that kind of thing that will go away. We'll be able to get some cost certainty earlier. And certainly, you know, where there's multiple little mini phases that have to get turned over, this is pretty common. You know, I've done a million lab renovations in my time, and you have this downtime while you're waiting for your specific equipment to be able to get procured. And this is pretty common when you have to turn a space over in 3 months, 4 months.
Great.
All right. Any other questions? We're tight on the time. Any other questions? Chip, I don't think we need a motion, do we?
No.
As long as we can get, you know, if you guys are comfortable letting us proceed with that schedule development, that would be just all I'm looking for.
We're comfortable.
Okay.
Anybody uncomfortable? Okay. There was one other quick thing. There was additional pre-construction services for exploratory work having to do with the exterior of the 1930s foundation to expose waterproofing, dam-proofing for sampling, and removal of brick at the exterior to expose subwall insulation for sampling.
Joe, I have to leave.
Total cost is $1,921.
I move that we approve the 1,000, whatever you said.
$921.
$921.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Let's see, Chip in favor?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Jason may have to, Jason, I don't know if he's still on, he had to leave. Tom?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Janine?
Yes.
Mark? I thought Mark was on. Okay.
Jason's a yes too. I'm still here.
Okay. Oh, Jason, there you are. You're still there. Unanimous.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. Thanks
everybody.
Take care, guys.
All right.
Good night. Thank you, Janet. Okay, I apologize for running late on the permanent building committee meeting. I'll now call to order the school building committee meeting. The purpose of this particular meeting is to explain the functions of the school building committee building committee in alliance with the permanent building committee and in accordance with the bylaws of the town of Wakefield and the requirements for the MSBA. According to our bylaws, an advisory committee must be created on any building project to help in the evaluation of bids and proposals, as well as gathering information, talking about feasibility, et cetera, and goes in great length. But what we are at now, and I hope that you have seen some of the information that has been put out regarding the high school project, is the design selection. We are in the design selection process. And part of that process The Permanent Building Committee and we have determined that everyone from the school building committee should be reviewing these proposals as is required by the bylaws. And I'm going to go through that process with you. And if you have questions, we can hopefully answer them. And for that, I'd go Shane, if you would, and Lynn, why don't you start out by describing the designer selection process for the building committee members.
Sure, yeah, if I can share my screen, Joe, I put together a short presentation.
I thought I made you co-host. There you go.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. Thank you for jumping on this evening. I think some of you know that the background of the project and where we are. Leftfield were appointed about a month ago or 6 weeks ago as the owner's project manager. We have been overseeing the designer selection process with the MSBA, the Mass Schools Building Authority. Over the last couple of weeks, we issued requests for services in early June, and people are looking at that. So just an overview on the designer selection. It's a little bit different. If any of you have been involved with any other town projects over the years, because we're in the MSBA process, and MSBA are going to partly fund the new high school, they're very involved with the designer selection. The process that they call it is the designer selection process. The MSBA has what they call the designer selection panel. That panel is made up of 13 members appointed by the executive director of the MSBA from various backgrounds and agencies within the state. But it's also made up of 3 members from Wakefield. So Wakefield can propose 3 members to represent the district as part of that designer selection panel. Total of 16 members, 9 members constitutes a quorum when the designer selection panel meet, which is usually every 2 weeks at MSBA. The goals of the designer selection panel, similar to the state DCAM, if you're familiar with that, they're looking to get a high quality design services for public projects. They have a process that's consistent with the Mass General Laws of Procurement. It's a broad-based participation by qualified firms, and there's certain qualifications that these firms must have to be eligible to even submit their qualifications for school and state projects. And then they want to make sure that this process is transparent and open to everybody. And with that, all the designer selection panel meetings are actually public meetings which anybody can attend. As with everything for the last 14 months or so, they've been doing them over Zoom, but certainly anybody can attend the meetings as they're scheduled. So the process, as I said, we've issued a request for services to interested parties. We've had about 50 firms request a copy of that request for services. On June 16th, we had a walkthrough. It was well attended by about 14 or 16 architectural firms. So right now they're putting together their submissions, and they'll submit the applications and supporting documentation to Leftfield, and we'll distribute it to all the designer selection panel members for their review. As I said, the designer selection panel meetings are open to the public, and they're typically held every 2 weeks. And we can look at the schedule in a moment. At this designer selection meeting, each designer who submits a proposal or an application, the panel will review that. There'll be discussion on each of them. And then after that, the panel will review them. There's a scoring criteria that I can look at in a moment, which will be used to determine who is shortlisted. And then if interviews are conducted, the same scoring system is used to give each of the final designers a ranking. It's usually ranked 1, 2, 3 in preference of the panel. Once that is over, we go into a negotiation with the highest ranked designer. we are required to go with that highest ranked designer. If we can't negotiate a fee with them, we'll move on to the second ranked designer, the third ranked designer, and so on until we can agree a fee with them. The criteria that is looked at through this process, as I said, they must be qualified under Mass General Law, Chapter 7C, Section 44, which defines what a designer is. They must also be MCPPO certified. MCPPO is Mass Certified Public Purchasing Official. It's something that the OPM and the designers must go through. It's organized by the Inspector General's office, and they must have that qualification. We look at their past performance and experience on similar schools and MSBA work. We look at the qualifications of the individual personnel assigned to the project, as well as the many consultants. There's up to 29 different consultants that they have to propose or do the work in-house. So there's a number of different disciplines that they have to tell us who they're going to use for the project. And then finally, we look at their current workload and their financial stability and their ability to complete this project. The initial feasibility study will take about 18 to 24 months. After that, it'll be 3 to 4 years before we finish design and actually construct and open the building. So it's a long process. We look at their current workload and their ability to complete the work. So this is the schedule. The first couple of items, as I said, we issued that request for services. It appeared in the Central Register. It was also advertised in the local newspaper in Wakefield on June 9th. Submissions are due to Left Field on July 7th. We'll organize those and we'll upload them onto a link where everybody can go and review them. Over the couple of weeks after that, we'll start reviewing them. We'll start getting references, and that will take us up until around July 21st. We have to confirm, but we may meet on July 8th just to review the submissions we got, just who we got, how many we got, and what the next steps are. We submit our initial packages to MSBA on July 15th, and then all that reference data, which takes a couple of weeks to get, we'll submit to MSBA and the designer selection panel July 21st. We're tentatively scheduled to go to the MSBA designer panel meeting on August 3rd. That's where we'll review all the submissions and select or shortlist a number of firms to be invited back to interview. Those interviews, if required, will happen on August 17th at the designer selection panel. After that, once we have our rankings, we will start to negotiate the design fee. That will take about a week, and then we'll execute a contract, hopefully by the end of August or early September. So that's a quick overview. There's lots of information on the MSBA website. I've put the link there on the presentation. If you go to that, there's tons of information, but that's a quick overview. I'm happy to answer any questions.
What I wanted to emphasize is that every member of the school building committee will review these design proposals, and they will then make comments to Left Field, to Shane Nolan.
Once we get the proposals in on the 7th, we'll put them on a share file and send the link to all of the people on the SBC. They'll be able to look at them and make any comments and send them directly to us. We can provide the comments to the 3 local representatives, and they'll have that in their arsenal when they are working with the MSBA on trying to whittle down the proposals to 3 designers.
And what the MSBA rules are is that you cannot rank them when we do it, but you can make comments.
Right. They want to have the ranking occur with the full designer selection panel. They don't really want you to come in with any preconceived notions of who you want to select. They want it to be a discussion on each of the designers.
Are there any questions regarding this process and how we're going to be doing this?
Were there any notes that came out of the walkthrough that you mentioned, and the RFS, is it more like an RFP where there's context that the designers have to answer, and would that be posted so we would know as we review the proposals that they sort of hit all of the bullet items?
We'll post the RFS to designers, so there is a list of criteria that they're supposed to respond to. So when you're looking at the proposals, you'll be able to compare it with the evaluation criteria contained in the request for services designers, request for designer services RFS that we put out.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I got one. It's a crystal ball question. Are there any indications in other projects, like how many designers proposals usually come in for projects like this?
Yeah, so there's about 12 or 14 design firms picked up. Many of the others were, consultants, engineers, and some of the construction publications that try and list it. But we had about 12 or 14 designers, so I would expect, somewhere between 6 and 10 maybe we'll submit.
Got it. Okay, just wondering. Thanks.
10, yeah. I will note the last couple of designer selection panel meetings have been canceled because there hasn't been a lot of work out there. So I think that there will be a lot of people who will chase this project.
I think you might get all 12 or 14 of them submitting.
Summer reading.
Mm-hmm.
Not all summer, Phil, though.
Not all summer, just
Yes.
1 week of the summer.
Yeah.
Yes, one intensive week reading proposals. Any other questions? Okay, everybody okay with this process? Hearing none, no comments. All right. As Lynn pointed out, that you'll once these proposals are in, we'll get that information to you so that you can review them, and you will then send the comments to left field. As indicated, we'll have a short meeting on the July 8th to let you know how many there are and if there's any other questions that people may have. All right.
I have one thing before we go, Joe.
Go ahead, Lynn. Yep.
I sent a project notification to everybody on the SBC. I'm not sure if everybody received it or not. It's just a project update. We're going to be doing these periodically when there's information that needs to be shared. So if that's another thing we would like to have from the SBC is if there's any topics that you think people are interested in, that you're hearing and that people are asking questions on, we'd like to know them so that we can address them in these project notifications that we're sending out.
Can I ask a question, Lynn? Actually, I had a question for that. I received yours on June 21st from you, Lynn.
Yes.
But then on the next day, I received project information from Donna Cushman in Wakefield Public Schools at 9:56 a.m. and then at 11:43 a.m. from the Communication Committee. So within a 24-hour period, I received 3, and that, as you know, is going to start getting old where people will just stop reading them. So I don't know what the process,
Right.
what lists people are on, or
I reached out to Jen McDonald, and we were going to work together on how we were going to disseminate it beyond the school building committee members. And somebody picked it up in the schools and just blasted it out prematurely. So we'll have that taken care of the next time around, because I really didn't want them to do that, because I'm using MailChimp, which tracks how many people the notices are getting to, how many people are opening them and reading them, how many people click on the links in them. So I wanted to send it all through that MailChimp service. And they just copied it and sent it in a couple of different formats. That wasn't supposed to happen that way. And we'll have it corrected next time around.
I figured as much. I figured it was the first one and maybe people are getting their lists in order. It would help. Like, I didn't realize why. Oh, I know why I'm getting it because I'm on the permanent building committee. So I didn't know who else was getting it though. So there was no sort of like disclaimer, like who was getting that message, I guess. So that's why
Yeah,
I
it
was a
should
little
have just
confused
been
by
the
it.
it
Yeah.
should have just been the SBC members, but it got sent out to all of the school district parents as
okay.
well. And then it got sent out through a town communications as well.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Phil?
What?
How about a motion to adjourn?
So
I move to adjourn.
if I could hold you up, Phil.
Oh, hold on. Shane does not want to adjourn.
Oh, what else you got, Jane? I'm sorry.
Well, just on the topic with Phil as well. So I sent a preview of my presentation tonight, and a number of the building committee responded to say they hadn't gotten notification of the meeting. So just want to make sure, Joe, that the town is going to send out the agendas to the full building committee. I can sort of
a invitation went out to about 30 some people.
Okay, is that through
Sherry?
So I'll give Sherry a call tomorrow, make sure she has every email and their correct emails. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it.
All right, anything else? Phil, how about that motion?
I move to adjourn.
And, a second. All in favor, click leave meeting. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much.
Take care.